Hey, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be propagating a few things, and that's what I feel like I do a lot of these days. I have quite a few plants. If you are new here, I don't know how many exactly, but it's past 100 at this point. So I'm going to be propagating a few because I got word on fall market dates. There we go. And if you don't know, I sold plants last spring or this spring at a local market, and so I am doing that hopefully in the fall as well. But I need some plants because by our last market they really sold me out of a lot of plants, and I feel like I don't have very many interesting plants. I would say I like to bring rare or uncommon plants that you don't find in your big box store. And so I was going through my collection today, just seeing what could be propagated and what needed to be cut back so that I can do that and start getting ready for the fall. If you are a new viewer here, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, that way you can be up to date on all of my latest videos. And if you are a recurring viewer, thank you so much for coming back and watching another video. We've got several plants here, some of which I have never propagated before, and others have been propagated many times. And so we're going to be taking a look at a few of those today. I kind of already went through my collection to see what I wanted to propagate. Again, I have a lot of plants, but not all of them I propagate and bring with me to sell, just a select few of them, I guess. And so I've gone through the select few, and here they are. The first one being this Florida Green, sorry. This Florida Green. So I have a Florida Beauty, a Florida Green, and a Florida Ghost. Not particularly my favorite plant, I will say. They are avid growers and they grow very fast, but I just don't prefer them, I guess. I don't prefer the green one for sure. So a lot of times I just sit here and propagate this one and make more plants. And so that is what I'm doing today, because as you can see, this vine has gotten incredibly long, and this one over here is not doing too bad, but we're just going to chop it all back and propagate them. Chopped that one back, and I will propagate that as is. I might need to cut off this leaf here. So when you are propagating specifically in water or perlite, I guess, you want to take the lowest leaf off of the stem so that it doesn't just rot out, because if you just set this leaf in water for a long enough time, and it's going to take a long time to form roots, then it will eventually rot and it won't be useful anyways. So I just like to take the lowest leaf off. That way it gives me enough room to stick this in water and roots grow out of these points. So I don't know if I have a video on this. I feel like I do because I propagate all the time. But when you are cutting from a philodendron, pothos, monstera, syngonium, etc., you do want to cut below the node. So the node is a little bump that you can hardly ever see, honestly, on plants, and that is where a new growth point is going to come out of. Typically, they have aerial roots around them, and that is where the new root system is going to form out of. So this guy is ready to go and be potted up in water. Not even potted up. Now this guy, he's really long. Again, this is my mother one, so I just chop them all the way back and then stick it back in my greenhouse and shelving unit, and it grows back. So this guy, again, I'm doing the same. I'm cutting it all the way back, all the way down to the pot, and it actually has a root. Oh, it has an aerial root that is attached really well. Oh my gosh, I did break that. So the roots already forming there. I'm going to take this lowest one, take it off, trash that, and now I have a new or a fresh area to place in water, or perlite is actually what I think I'm going to do, but it already has a root system, so you can see there, it's a good sign, and it will take less time to root. But this guy is so long, I'm actually going to take a few more cuttings from it. I'm going to take a cutting, I'm going to say here, so that this part will go in water, and then I'm going to take one right here. So then this top cut will go into water, and then this leaf right here will go away, and then I'm left with this piece. And that's just typically how I do it. Not everybody does it the same. Some people leave those leaves. I don't. And then I'll take this, and honestly, I don't know, I might just take this piece too, because I can stick that in like perlite or water like that, and then leave this placed right there, or plant right there. And then I will stick this guy, because again, he has 2 other places that he's growing back in my cabinet, and he will be good. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants off of that one. Now I actually do have, again, I said I had a Florida Beauty. I do have a propagation of it right here. So the difference between a Florida Beauty, Florida Green, and a Florida Ghost, Florida Beauty is variegated. So you can see this yellow variegation right here, right there, and right there a little bit. This one doesn't have as much. The Florida Green is just all green, and the Florida Ghost is more of a minty white green. Some people get very ghosty ones that are pure white. Mine is more minty and leans to the green side. And honestly, it's a very slow grower, which doesn't surprise me because of the lack of chlorophyll in them, and just its ability to not, or it's doesn't have the ability to grow and produce leaves like an all green one does, because the green is what grows. The white, if you have an albo, whatever type of plant that has a lot of white on it, you might notice that it takes a lot longer to grow. And that is because, again, it's lacking. It doesn't have what it needs to fully grow. And so it just takes a lot longer. Now, this guy, I really do want to chop up in 3 places. The variegation on it is not spectacular by any means. I have seen some pretty awesome ones. However, this one's kind of lacking. So I do want to chop this up. I already know that. I am going to chop it here so that this will be 1. And I'm actually going to chop it down here and place it in a covered dish with perlite and just do a wet stick propagation on it. I'm not going to take this leaf off. I will stick this in perlite or something and let it grow like that. But I'll just keep it like that. And then I'm going to do the same for this guy. I'm going to chop it here. This actually has a new growth point on it already. I really wish my camera would pick it up. It's a little green bump right there, but that means that it's good to go and super healthy, and it will hopefully take no time for it to grow a new leaf. Now, sometimes I have seen, if it's like that, it will produce the leaf before it produces any root system, which is kind of crazy to me, but it will be okay. And then I'll leave this guy top cutting as is. And then again, this piece will be a different propagation method. So that's the Floridas taken care of. Now this guy, this is a Horseshoe Filodendron. I picked this up earlier in the spring and it's just been growing like a crazy man. So it actually is very closely looks like a Florida Green and a Silver Sword. So it definitely has the same coloring as a Silver Sword does. And when it gets a lot larger, it can have a similar leaf pattern as this Florida Beauty does, but it's definitely, I don't know, a horse head is what it's called. And it definitely looks like a horse head. It's long. And so I'm going to chop it all back because we got some pieces growing wild here. This definitely has the same growth pattern as my Philodendron mayoi. And they have, again, they're obviously in the same plant genus, just similar growth patterns I've noticed, which is going crazy. And they have a lot of aerial roots. Oh, you can see all those little aerial roots. So I chopped it there. This leaf is broken. I think it's been broken, to be fairly honest. And then I'm going to take the bottom 2 leaves off because that's really close. Then I'll stick that in water and that will become 1. Then I'm going to chop it, maybe not again, because it's looking better already. So yeah, I'm going to chop this guy over here, cut it back like that, because it actually has a good space to grow. And then I'm going to do the same over here. It's actually pushing off a new growth point. And so I'm just going to take this guy, propagate that. It has a new aerial root. And then same for this down here. Trying to cut as low as I can to the pot. That's typically what I do. I cut the plant all the way back and then it will regrow. And a lot of aerial roots I just had to cut off. And so I'm going to take this lowest leaf off and then I will propagate that. And I feel like that's good. Leaving that guy to be that is good. It's growing out of the pot also. You see those little roots? It's a very fine root system. Now again, the Silver Sword. So this Silver Sword grows so quickly and just is an avid grower. I mean, it's an amazing plant. If you want an easy to care for climbing philodendron, this is it. It does not take much to get this guy to climb and grow. And he just sits under my Barina grow lights in my greenhouse cabinet or shelving unit. Does so well. And I have propagated him seriously probably 20 times. I've chopped this plant all the way back and it has grown from nothing. I purchased it as a 4-inch pot. And it's given me so much and so many plants. So I will stick this in water. And then I'm also going to cut right here, because again, this is a super easy plant to propagate and just easy to grow. Staying here, using that one, cutting it back. And then this is the original 2 mother leaves. I had this growing on a moss pole for quite some time, and then it started growing up my wall, and that's when I decided that it just grew too fast for my care and my space, and decided to chop it all up, and have gotten, again, so many plants from it. But the leaves really sized up because I did get this in a 4-inch pot. Again, I don't remember where from, but I feel like it was pretty inexpensive for what it was at the time, and it has just given me so much. It's a beautiful plant. Very easy to care for, very easy to propagate and grow back. So those were those 2. I have a pile forming here now. Now this one is a new one that I've never propagated before. This is a variegated Dapsis or a Dapsis aurea. It has the yellow and green and cream variegation. I picked this up in Florida recently and it's super beautiful. I actually really like Dapsis. They're very easy to propagate. I have another one I'm going to propagate today. And grow vigorously. However, they do take a lot of light. If you want to grow these successfully and you have not, give them light. They need it in order to grow well. Otherwise, they tend to yellow and die off. They also don't like to dry all the way out. So I know that they are related to the pothos, but they are not like the pothos in the manner of they can just be left for long periods of time. In my care, I've had to keep on them and water them frequently, just making sure they stay kind of consistently moist in order for them to grow and be happy. And so I guess I'll just show my other one. So I have 2 Dapsis. I have one Silvery Ann, I think is what it is, and then this Exotica. So this Exotica, let's just take it out of the pot, has grown, I mean, so much since I've had it. I purchased this back in 2020, actually. And it didn't do well. Like, it was not doing well. And that's before I figured out that you had to have the highlight and be consistent on their watering. And so I just kind of left it to the wayside. It kind of died all the way off. And then we moved here and I started paying more attention to it because they started going up in price and they were really hard to find. So I knew I wanted to hold on to it and not just let it completely die off. But I didn't understand its care. And so I just stuck it under a Barina T5 grow light in my bedroom, and it immediately took off. I made sure that my watering was on, and this thing has grown so much. So I know that this looks like it's nothing. That's because about 4 months ago, I chopped it all the way back and propagated it. And I had multiple little 4-inch pots at my last show, or my previous shows. And they sold out because it is a beautiful plant. It's just, it is a little bit hard to care for. You can see the brown tips here. So if you don't know that they need that highlight, they can be a pain. But once I figured that out, it just grew so well. And again, this is from chopping it back twice. I chopped it back twice and it grew back to this. So very fast grower, very beautiful plant. And I just kind of continue to do the same thing. I chop it back and create more plants, and it always grows back. But it is so impressive. I really wish I would have taken a photo because I truly chopped this all the way back. There was not a single leaf on this plant. I promise you, not a single leaf. And it grew back to this. So it's just a testament. They are like the pothos in that way, where they are very hardy plants. You just have to make sure that you have the right, environment before you go doing that. Because I guarantee if I had done that in a lower light situation and not been watering it, it would not have made it. But we're going to chop it back again and propagate some more because I sold out of them. I don't have any more plants to sell. And again, they did really well. So I'm just chopping it all the way back like that. Now what's sad is I might have to lose this leaf, but I kind of don't want to. So I'm going to try and save it and just propagate it in a smaller little, you know, I don't know, vessel. And then I'm going to keep this top cutting right here. And then down here, I've got a few other vines that I can take. I'm going to take this one. I'm just seriously so impressed by how well they have done. And I'm going to get rid of this leaf because there is a new one on the way. Then I'm going to do this little one here as well. This tiny little guy. So cute. Again, if you give them the right light, they will grow so well. I'm going to propagate this guy. Take this leaf off. And I'm not going to propagate and chop all of this plant back because there are a lot of single leaves that have just come up from where I chopped them all the way back. So they don't have a vine yet. And I will leave them and let them grow. And honestly, that's probably all I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it to this and then we'll see how fast it grows back. So I only got a few cuttings of that one, but they will grow quickly and I will have maybe 2 pots available. But super beautiful plant and just so fun to see grow back like that. But back to this guy. So I'm hoping that this plant is the same as that one. It is variegated. It is a rare plant, so it's hard to tell how easy they are to propagate and multiply. But this one, I picked it because it has a really long vine. And so I can chop this guy pretty much in the entire way up and it will be so many plants. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to do that because again, it scares me a little bit since it is such a rare plant. So I'm thinking that I'm actually just going to chop it back to this leaf right here. That way I can propagate these new leaves up top. There are a few plants that were already damaged when I purchased them. So it's like 2 leaves, yeah, that are not pretty at all whatsoever. But these 2 are really nice at the bottom, but the other ones coming and growing out are very beautiful and have a really great variegation. So since I purchased this, I have just placed it under my T5 Barina grow light in my greenhouse shelving unit. I have given it direct light and have watered it consistently. I've not let this dry out. That's not true. I did let it dry out when I first got it home and it immediately wilted and I could tell that it was not happy. And so I watered it and the next day came back and it was doing really great and standing upright. So this is what I've chopped off. I'm going to take several cuttings from this, as you can see. So here and here, I'm going to start right here though. That way this piece can go in water, be propagated like that. And look how pretty the coloring is. I just love the color of this, especially on the Orias. They're my favorite. Like, look how beautiful that is. I think that that's stunning. So I'm going to take these. They don't have any leaves on them right here and actually do wet stick propagation method on them, just like I'm doing with my Florida Beauty. It will take months for a wet stick propagation to actually produce anything worthy of being repotted, but it is worth it. And I have seen great success when I have done that. So these are the 3 that I'm doing or using as my just single leaf cuttings. And again, I will stick those in a more shallow pot. That way I don't have to get rid of those leaves. On a plant, again, like my Florida Green and my Dapsis that I know grow super well and fast, I'm not afraid to just pull a leaf off because I know it's going to die anyways and throw it away. But for this guy, I definitely don't want to do that. Okay, so this is what's left of that plant, of the mother plant, and I'm just going to keep it like that. I really do want to cut it back because you can see there are several leaves missing, but I'm going to refrain from doing that. So I've got that done. Now, got my silver swords done. The last, 2 more. One of which I've propagated 100 times over is this Mangula pothos. So Mangula pothos are very beautiful. But to me, honestly, they're a little bit tricky to care for. I do have to make sure that I am watering them well and consistently, and they do like a good amount of light. But this is the mother plant of my other propagations. And I've just been kind of chopping it back because I didn't like the way it was growing. And it was an impulse at one night, and I have a whole video on this. I just chopped it completely back. I did what I did with the Dapsis, and it grew really well and back, and it has been successful in a 4-inch pot, you know, growing them. But it's starting to just yellow and not be happy again. And so I'm just going to chop it all the way back again and propagate it, because it's turned out to not really be a favorite of mine. And yeah, I don't know. So I'm just going to keep that as is, propagate this part. I don't really need to cut the leaves off of that. I will cut the leaf off of this one and leave that stem right there. It is a beautiful bubbly plant. It's just, for some reason, I'm not great at growing them unless it's in my greenhouse cabinet. In the greenhouse cabinet, they grow really well. Outside of that, it's not a fan of whatever I'm doing, and I can't really figure it out because it sits under a T5 Bring a Grow Light, and yeah, but I'll take that cutting. I mean, you can see how many times I've chopped this plant up. I'll show you in the pot. Ooh, that was rooted in. But if you look inside the pot here, you can see like how many times I've propagated. There's just chunks of it everywhere and leaves growing off of it. And again, it grows back very easily and very quickly. It's just once it does start to grow, it just seems like it starts yellowing and dying off faster. I'll leave that. You can see like the tiny little bubbly leaves right here. I'll leave it and I'll put it back and let it regrow. Now, the last one that I'm doing, and it's not really a big chop, but this is my Philodendron Brazil, and I have 2 Philodendron Brazils. I love them. I think that they are very beautiful. I actually need to repot this one into a DIY thing that I'm still working on. It's been months, but I need to repot it into that. However, it's just been growing pretty long and leggy, and I, again, think that these are such beautiful plants, and I didn't have very many of them. I took some cuttings from my mother plant, of my other plant, and sold them, but I think I'm just going to take off some of these like runners that we've got going all around here and propagate them, because they're very easy to propagate and they're very beautiful plants. So if you want a cost-effective variegated plant, this is a top-notch one. So now it's still full, lush basket, and it will grow back. That's all I've got. That's the propagation or propagations that I'm taking, and it's a handful, quite literally. So I will place all of these in perlite or water. I like to put them in perlite because I feel like they root a lot better. Water is fine, but I do have a hard time sometimes with water. I tend to see more propagations fail than they do survive. But with perlite, I just stick them in a red Solo cup. I poke some holes in the bottom. I put some perlite and water in the bottom cup, and then just stick it in there. It's kind of like a self-watering pot, basically. And I just refill the water cache, you could call it, as needed, basically. And so I have had great success with that. These will all go under my Bring a Grow Lights in my greenhouse shelving unit. That way they stay with consistent light. High light while propagating is very helpful. If you're sticking this in a lower light situation, it's just going to take them longer to grow roots. So I do like to give them the highest light that they can stand. That way that they produce roots faster. I've also found that putting them in a lucite or a, not an opaque jar helps them grow roots, because it's a darker ground-like setting. I don't know if that makes any sense or if that's actually helpful, versus a clear cup where a lot of light comes in and a lot of the moisture is just sucked out and you're constantly kind of having to refill it. I do not do soil. I stick away with that. And then for my wet stick propagations, I use perlite or sphagnum moss and just stick them in a covered dish and bury them completely. Keep it consistently moist. I really like to use sphagnum moss for that. I don't have any, so perlite's going to be my next choice. Keep it consistently moist, keep that cover on it, and just spray it whenever I see the condensation of the lid kind of deteriorating or being, evaporating. There we go. I do use a clear lid for that because I like to see when that evaporation happens and when I need to water it, but that's kind of all I do for that, and it has been successful. And so I will use that method on these two, which is a Florida Beauty and a Dapsis Aureum. That was it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, and we will see you next time.